sent ripples through both political and financial circles. Standing at a podium with his usual bravado, Trump vowed to impose a staggering 200% tariff on John Deere's imported products if the company proceeded with its controversial decision to relocate specific production lines to Mexico. This wasn't just another rhetorical jab at globalization. This was a full-scale economic threat aimed directly at one of America's most iconic manufacturers. The spark that ignited this conflict came in June when John Deere officially announced its intention to shift part of its manufacturing south of the border. The move, which on the surface appeared to be a great strategy aimed at boosting efficiency and accessing new markets, instead cracked open a deep rift between competing economic future. What seemed like a simple relocation strategy quickly escalated into a confrontation about loyalty, labor, trade policy, and ultimately the very definition of what it means to be an American company. Trump's warning was clear, sharp, and unmistakably aggressive. I'm notifying John Deere right now. If you do that, we're putting a 200% tariff on everything that you want to sell into the United States. That statement didn't just ring across factory floors or newsrooms. It reverberated through the very core of Washington and ignited intense debates from Wall Street. Boardrooms to grain silos in Iowa. What began as a corporate logistics decision had suddenly ballooned into a pivotal moment for American trade policy, setting off alarms in trading hubs from New York to São Paulo. Beneath the surface, the announcement unveiled not just an economic conflict, but a symbolic clash between competing visions of America's role in the 21st century economy. On one side stood a populist former president, leveraging nationalist sentiment to rally his base. On the other stood one of the country's most recognizable agricultural brands, confronting the cold realities of global competition and technological change. As the backlash gained steam, Trump's response was immediate and theatrical. He lambasted John Deere in front of live television audiences, framing the move not as a business decision, but as an act of treachery against the American worker. He painted Deere's expansion as a betrayal of the very people who helped build the company into the household name it is today. And then came the hammer blow. The threat of a 200% tariff on every John Deere product manufactured outside American. Borders. His message to Deere's executives, its workers, and its customers was unmistakable. If you move jobs out of America, your products will face massive financial penalties coming back in. The media frenzy that followed was intense. Networks analyzed every word of Trump's speech. Investors anxiously awaited the market's response. Meanwhile, across the heartland, farmers and rural communities watched with growing unease. For them, this wasn't just about economics or politics. This was personal. Caught in the middle of the storm were America's farmers, the very people who rely on John Deere machinery to plant, harvest, and sustain their livelihoods. They suddenly found themselves witnessing a war between a political leader they largely supported and the very company that provided them with the tools to put food on the table. What played out wasn't just a fight over tariffs or corporate decisions. It was a reckoning for rural America. John Deere's leadership didn't make their decision lightly. Behind closed doors, executives pored over months of research, financial data, and market forecasts. They knew that this move would be controversial, but they also knew the numbers didn't lie. The reality facing John Deere, like many American manufacturers, was harsh. The cost of doing business domestically had ballooned over the past decade. Supply chains had become increasingly snarled, especially in the aftermath of the global pandemic. Labor was in short supply, and even when it was available, the rising costs of wages and benefits made it difficult to compete globally. Meanwhile, competitors were sharpening their strategies. Global brands like Kubota from Japan and Mahindra from India had already perfected the art of low-cost, efficient production across Asia. These companies had streamlined their operations, reduced overhead, and strategically positioned themselves closer to booming booming agricultural markets. In this high-stakes environment, John Deere wasn't expanding in Mexico to boost quarterly profits. They were doing it to survive. Mexico offered a compelling package. Labor costs approximately 70% lower than in the United States. A workforce with proven skills in manufacturing and logistical access to rapidly expanding agricultural economies throughout Latin America. Beyond payroll savings, the move addressed critical bottlenecks in Deere's supply chain. U.S. ports were congested. Domestic freight was erratic, and delays in securing raw materials were costing Deere valuable time and millions of dollars. Setting up operations in Mexico wasn't just about trimming costs. It was about giving the company the flexibility, speed, and proximity to service regions where agriculture wasn't just growing, it was exploding. Markets like Brazil, Argentina, and Colombia represented the future of global agriculture. With booming demand for compact, affordable machinery tailored to small and mid-sized farms. And that's precisely what Deere's new $55 million Mexican facility would produce. Mid-frame skid steer loaders and compact track loaders, versatile machines perfectly suited for the next generation of farms. These weren't the massive combines or harvesters often seen rolling across Iowa cornfields. These were machines designed for smaller farms that needed technology, efficiency, and affordability all rolled into one. From Deere's perspective, this wasn't betrayal. It was strategy. A strategic move designed to future-proof the company's business model in the face of changing global dynamics. Yet for Donald Trump, was deeply personal. Standing before supporters in Iowa, heartland territory for both John Deere and Trump, he fired rhetorical cannonballs. John Deere just spit in the face of American workers, Trump thundered. They want to build our machines somewhere else? Fine. But they will not bring them back here without paying dearly. This wasn't just a trade threat. It was a political signal. Trump was drawing battle lines, not only for John Deere, but for every other American corporation weighing the risks and rewards of global expansion. His message was simple: play ball with America First policies, or prepare to be punished politically, economically, and publicly. But John Deere's leadership didn't flinch. They issued a carefully worded response emphasizing that the expansion into Mexico would impact less than 5% of their total North American production. Most of the big, iconic Deere machines, tractors, harvesters, combines, would still roll off production lines in Iowa, Illinois, and across U.S. facilities. Deere wasn't abandoning American manufacturing. They were optimizing for the global economy. As expected, Wall Street reacted swiftly but rationally. After an initial dip in stock value following Trump's remarks, Deere's stock quickly stabilized and rebounded. Financial analysts, including heavyweights from Bloomberg and Goldman Sachs, defended the move as a forward-looking strategy that aligned with the shifting contours of global agriculture. They pointed to a simple, undeniable fact. The center of gravity in global farming was shifting southward, and Deere was aligning its production to meet that demand. Tariffs sting in the short run, but they wouldn't derail a multi-decade growth trajectory. In fact, some insiders argued that Trump's threats might inadvertently help Deere by damaging foreign competitors even more. If a blanket tariff were imposed on all foreign-made agricultural equipment, it would hit competitors like Mahindra, Yanmar, and Kubota, companies that already produced much more of their inventory outside the United States, far harder than Deere. However, while market analysts dissected the potential upside for Deere, the real drama played out in the court of public opinion. Across rural America, particularly in